Hello and welcome to the latest edition of The Voice of Diaspora with the Ctca. My name is Eray Galip. I'm one of the newest members of the Ctca and I'm here to help bring the community together through these TV programs. Today we are lucky enough to have joining us the chair of the Turkish Language, Culture and Educational Consortium, as well as assistant principal at Duke's Aldridge Academy, Nuriye Mertcan. Nuriye, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Eray. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to join us through this virtual interview chat.
Yes, thank you for having me and giving up your time for this.
That's okay. Fantastic. I mean, just kick it off, just when I mentioned on the intro that you're the head of the Turkish Cypriot Language, Culture and Education Consortium, as well as an assistant principal for a school in Tottenham. It's a lot to be going on with yourself. But for those viewers who may not know about these roles, could you just elaborate on what those roles are?
So in terms of the Turkish Culture, Education and Language Consortium, we support 36 supplementary schools across the UK, mainly in London. It started off in London, and now we have members as far south as Swindon and as far north as Nottingham. Wow. Just to support the Turkish-speaking community in the UK, to ensure that they are learning their language and being successful in the education scene across both in mainstream education, but also gaining qualifications in Turkish GCSE and A-level, which, you know, are very important in moving on to university. So that's my role within the consortium. In terms of my role as an assistant principal, I'm assistant principal for curriculum development and learning. So it's ensuring really that the courses that the students are on are there, teachers are delivering high standard lessons, and that children are actually learning and going on to courses that are challenging, but also aspirational for them to be with. So it's a lot of plates to keep spinning, but it's fun. So we'll continue,
it's amazing.
Hopefully.
Yeah, well done. Oh, well done. So taking it back a step, I mean, just talking about the kind of the consortium, the organisation, how did it kind of start and come about and come to be?
Well, I believe if I sort of look back at the history, in 2000, there was a, so going back to the history, in 2000, the Conseil had, the Ctca had an education arm, which in 2003 became the consortium to support the member schools that they had. So they had, as part of the Conseil, member schools, and they decided to be more supportive and form the consortium. From 2006, the consortium broke further away from the Conseil and became a body on its own. And rather than just support Turkish Cypriot schools, we now support schools of all Turkish-speaking communities. So we've gone away from the idea that there are Turkish Cypriot schools and non-Turkish Cypriot schools. We call them all Turkish-speaking Turkish language schools. And recently, we've also been working closely with the Ministry of Religion, the Diyanet, and supporting their teachers over here as well, because there are currently 39 teachers over from Turkey to support the Turkish schools, 11 teachers from Northern Cyprus, and about 50 members of staff from Diyanet who come and support the Turkish community in a range of educational roles. And I guess the role of the consortium is to ensure that, one, they fully understand the British education system from which they draw their students, and to ensure they're compliant with all the roles in terms of child protection, safeguarding, prevent. And that's our role, as well as working very hard, actually, to maintain the GCSE exams. Because during the GCSE reforms, Turkish GCSE and A-level were on the verge of disappearing.
Oh, wow.
They were going to be discontinued, and due to all the work and the chairperson before me, Necmi Hasanoğlu, and all his hard work, we now have Turkish GCSE and A-level continue, and it's to ensure that we keep it alive. So there it is in history. So yes,
pretty good shot at remembering everything about the history there.
Just checking my notes.
That's it. Brilliant. You're a natural. And just talking about the consortium, you mentioned there about supporting the community by making sure that GCSEs and A-levels stay on the curriculum and doing things like that. So, I mean, how else do they kind of support the community in London and the UK, as you mentioned, which is great that it's expanding out on different areas rather than just concentrating on the key areas?
Well, as our communities are moving out of the areas which we first came into, we also have to reflect that and have bases all around the country. Another way we do is training events for parents. we have to acknowledge that the parents who came over here as children themselves came from a very different education system to the one that we are in. So it's ensuring that parents do understand the system. So as I was growing up, I lived in Cyprus until I was 9. When I went to primary school, it would be, there you go, this child is now your responsibility to the teacher. And so anything that went on at school was the teacher's responsibility. Anything that went at home was the parent's responsibility. And coming into a system where actually it's a partnership made up of 3 parties, the student, the family, and the school working together for success. So that's something we do. So we run a lot of training programs for parents. We provide a lot of advice for parents who may need support on if their child's been excluded, or in terms of options, which subjects to choose. So we provide support there. And we've recently, so last year, provided training for all the teachers. So those who are UK based and those from Turkey and Cyprus on the new GCSE and A-level reforms, which came in very handy actually when GCSEs were cancelled and teachers had to provide valid centre assessed grades. Because we had provided that education, we were able to write to the schools and say, here we go, here is all our evidence, please accept our centre assessed grades too, which they did. Amazing. So that's some of the ways we work with the community. That
is amazing. I mean, you mentioned kind of some of the challenges there, but I mean, what are the kind of the greatest educational challenges faced by our community, do you think?
Unfortunately, if you look at, and I can speak for the local borough of Haringey, I've been teaching in Haringey now for 20 years. When you look at the key stage 2 stats results, so what students achieve at the end of primary school, unfortunately, the Turkish speaking community are the percentage of students, especially boys, who are below age expected is far higher when you compare that to some other communities. So last year or the year before, only 50% of the Turkish speaking boys were age appropriate for reading and writing, which is terrible. Because it does mean when they come to secondary school, they cannot access the curriculum and be as successful as they need to be. So that's one of the issues that we face as a community. And I keep referring to this as a Turkish-speaking community because we are a very broad community, actually. And maybe the term Turkish-speaking no longer applies to us because we have so many of our young that are unable to speak Turkish. Yeah. So it's supporting them and making them aware and actually proud of their culture, that it is possible to integrate into the system we live in without becoming English. You know, you can still speak your language and you can still be proud of your heritage and be fully integrated into the UK. So we support our parents that way. In terms of exclusions, unfortunately, our students, again, Turkish-speaking students are overrepresented when it comes to percentage of exclusion and how representative it is, as we are unfortunately overrepresented in prison population too. So we have very successful, very young and very vibrant community here. Please, by all means, do not think I'm painting everyone with the same brush. We have so many success stories, but there are so many of our young that are slipping through the cracks. And I think the best advertising you can have for a country, for a community, is to have really successful, powerful members, so you can make our voices heard, really.
100%. And I think that speaks volumes. I think there's so many people in our community that are going on to do so many successful things, whether it's through entertainment or business. And I think, it's making sure we recognize that these are Turkish Cypriots, these are Turkish people that are really successful, and just showing the youngsters that this is happening. And we need, that is definitely 100%. We need to do that, definitely.
And positive role models, because
positive, exactly.
Many, but we don't
100%.
publicize them, we don't advertise them very well. So we have so many doctors and lawyers and accountants, and it's about getting those people back down to the coalface, as I call it, really. So not just pulling up the ladder after you reach there, but going back and supporting the others to ensure the rest of the community move up too. And maybe that's something that we don't do too well as a community.
100%, I agree. I think there's so many people that need to sort of pull the ladder back down and help those youngsters and just guide them a bit more and show them what is possible for our community. Exactly that. I think, use the ladder analogy exactly as it popped in my head. So 100%. I mean, thinking about, obviously, summer's over, children are now back at school. It's been a unprecedented year. I know I shouldn't use that word. We've used it a lot this year, but it's been an unprecedented year, as you can imagine. So with all kids kind of going back to school post-COVID, is there any advice you could give to help families that no doubt feel this is a big transition? I myself am a parent, and putting those kids back in school, it was a big transition because they've become so used to the kind of the 6 months of being locked indoors. So I was just wondering, as a teacher yourself, as an assistant principal, any advice you could give to families who help dealing with that transition?
I think we have to acknowledge that it is such a big change for the students and for teachers. I mean, we've been at home for 5 months. So since March, when the schools shut down, students missed such a big chunk of education. And if we all acknowledge and agree that education changes life chances, and it's a way of moving through society, then it's really important that students engage with education. And unfortunately, the quality of the offer for different schools was not consistent. So some schools had full online education, some schools did nothing. Some students engaged perfectly with it, other students did not and hadn't engaged at all. So what it has done is really widen that gap. And that can cause a lot of anxiety, one for students and two for parents. I mean, I'm a parent of a student who's just started year 11 and another one in year 9.
Wow.
So it's looking and seeing how can we make this transition easier for them, but how can we also close the gaps? And yes, it is going to be difficult, but it's ensuring that children do keep up with the reading, that they are reading, they are still engaging, and where possible, attending school. I mean, you said post-COVID. I don't think we are.
Well, yeah, that's probably
I think
wishful thinking.
This is the new normal, and it's
post part one.
Post part one. After the break, during the break. It's being able to feel comfortable and trusting the schools. So I know a lot of people, rightly so, lost trust in the government, really, because of everything, because the way they dealt with it or the lack of dealing with it. So it isn't the government that's deciding certain things. It's up to the individual schools and their senior leadership team. So it's really having trust in the confidence in the leadership team that they will make the right decisions for you. A lot of procedures and practices are in place to make schools safe. And it's trying to remain as positive as possible and as safe as possible. Definitely. So masks and, social distancing, because education does transform life chances, and we have to ensure we do not lose out on that.
100%, I agree. And you mentioned before, but you just mentioned then about how some parents may be losing confidence in the government and turning to them for advice. How can the consortium help overcome those challenges if they're having them? And can parents reach out to you directly, not yourself, obviously, directly, or how can they get advice?
There's an email address, info@educationconsortium.org.uk. So if they search Londra Eğitim Consortium, it will come up. So the consortium, and on there's a website, an email address that is checked regularly. So we do have parents contact us, ask for advice. So simple things like, should I send my child back to school or not? And we can answer those questions. Or which exam board? So, for example, there are no equivalent of GCSEs and A-levels in Cyprus and Turkey. So getting us to try and explain those, we're more than happy to do that. So if any families are finding issues with the mainstream education system, they should contact us. We've also been supporting families through SEND. Unfortunately, a lot of our families do not know their entitlements. And it's important that if a child does have additional needs, those needs are met, but not by people who are going to charge you extortionate amounts, because they're out there too. We had a family contact us the other day who are being charged £200 a week to work with a 5-year-old that is autistic. There's no reason for you to be paying that out at all. Wow. There is something in school, and the question was asked, have you contacted the SENCO at the school and worked with them? And they were told not to tell the SENCO. So it's informing parents of what they should do, and supporting them for what's best for our children.
100%. Nuriye, just then you talked about SEND and SENCO. I think for those viewers at home who may be unaware of what SEND and SENCO are, could you give us a bit of a brief overview of what those are?
Okay, SEND stands for special educational needs. So it's students who have been identified as not making enough progress and looking for the underlying reasons as to why that child is not making enough progress. So is it a cognitive issue, or is it one of communication, where a lot of students actually cannot get the words out? So is that then reflected as outbursts? So in the past, they used to say, well, it's a mental issue. Actually, in SEN, we're looking at what are the underlying issues. Why is that child all of a sudden having these outbursts of anger? Is it because they cannot communicate effectively? And so because they can't get the words out, they cannot then they get frustrated at not being able to communicate? Or is it a cognition issue? So it's what's the reason that a child cannot make the expected progress? So that's special needs, special educational needs. And SENCO is the person in the school, the special educational needs coordinator, who needs to speak up for the rights of these children, really. Their job is to come up to the senior leadership team and ensure that children are getting the support that they are entitled to. So if a child is identified as having special educational needs, then a plan is drawn out. So those plans used to be called a statement. They're now called educational healthcare plans, so EHIC plans. And how are we going to support that child? What is it that they need support with? And how are we going to do it? And there is funding attached to that for the schools. It's not enough. It really isn't enough. But it's ensuring that those needs are met, so the gap doesn't widen any further, and if possible is narrowed. So that's special educational needs and SENCOs. And I want to sort of talk about this. Us parents assume that if a child is said to have special educational needs, they are labelled, they are branded. That is not the case. If a child is entitled to access arrangements in an exam, and that may be additional 15 minutes, or someone to read the question to them, or if they can't write, someone to scribe the paper for them, that is an entitlement. Yet so many parents say, well, no, my child is normal, I don't want that. And actually, what is normal? Are any of us normal? There's no such thing as normal. So it's looking at, why are they these gaps? How can we close them? And ensuring that the child is at a school that meets their needs. So it is since 2015, when the new special educational needs policy came out, it's ensuring that children are in schools where they can meet their needs. There is specialist provision, and there's no such thing as, oh, I want to send my child to a normal school, because there's no such thing as normal. It's what's best for that child.
Definitely. But it's great that the people can reach out. And I know I'm stating the obvious. Obviously, they can, English and Turkish. They can contact you just because it's chosen English. I thought, let's just put it out there just so everyone understands that they can contact in Turkish and in English, and people are there to help. But it's amazing that that service is there and it's not really publicized. We need to make sure that it's publicized and make sure people know about it. So it's great that you kind of voiced that on this chat. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And it is all voluntary. The consortium is run by a bunch of volunteers. So if it takes time to get back to people, then, please accept our apologies for that. And we do.
But help is on the way.
Everyone, but it is all run by volunteers who just want to work together for the sake of our children and the community.
Exactly. It's all for the future, for our community. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Nuriye, I just wanted to ask you, what's your view on private tuition?
I think if it's done properly, it can be valuable, but it's very important that we look at if it's done properly. So many of my students get private tuition, and I say, has your tutor asked you which examination board you are going with? And they say, no. So there are different examination boards. It's important, because it is an unregulated industry, it's important that you really do know and understand the person, and actually ask them, which examination board are you going to be teaching my child? Why are you charging this much? What is your training? Because not everybody who's got a science degree can be a science teacher or a science tutor. And there have been times where students have been disadvantaged because they were taught wrong information really well. So yes, private tuition has its place. Do I agree with it? Not really. But I understand some students need extra support, but parents should also ensure that they're going and getting support from the school, speaking to the school. Should my child get tuition? I have this at parents' evening all the time. Should I get my child a tutor? No, you should ensure your child listens in class and does their homework and reads at home. You know, it's not, you can't clear your conscience by paying a private tutor extortionate amounts. Make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do when. And please remember that they are children and they need to be children. So many of us are now in that cycle of, I need to pick my child up from school, I need to take them to this lesson, then ballet, then piano, then this, then that. But they need to be children too. So let's bear that in mind too, please.
And you know, going back to kind of the schools opening and everything, you know, speaking as a parent myself, one of my biggest fears I had over lockdown was my child falling behind. Like you said, you know, we kept up with the reading, we kept up with Joe Wicks in the morning as much as we could, but we kept up with the reading and the lesson plans and things like that. But you know, I know part of me also still there in the back, still feeling the same of, you know, have I done enough? Have I not done enough? If parents do have concerns that their child is falling behind or with the emotional readjustment of getting back to school, you know, what would be your advice to that? Can they get in contact as well? Or what should parents do essentially, do you think?
The first thing is share their fears with the schools, because the schools are aware of this, and a lot of support has gone into not just the academic gap, but also supporting students with their mental health and looking at how they can better support those students from primary actually all the way through to secondary. So your best bet, your first port of call should be the school, making them aware that these are the issues. So for example, students can put themselves forward for counselling, and it's in making the most of what's in school. And if nothing is offered, then get in touch with us to see how we can support or how we can advise, what we can advise. But your first point of call has to be the school, because they are there to help. And speaking as a senior leader at one, it is extremely difficult, and it's a very testing time for everyone, and it's being patient and working together.
Perfect. Amazing. Now also talking about kind of secondary schools as well, you know, kids starting year 11, starting schools in unusual circumstances with restrictions, and you know, they're probably not used to, and it's a whole new school, it's a whole new experience. There's probably a lot of, like you say, a lot of anxiety that you know, and worries. Under your role as assistant principal, what's your school doing to preserve that sense of normality, to ensure that children aren't disadvantaged by the kind of effects of COVID restrictions?
So what we have done is we've tried to keep the school day as normal as possible, and including lengthening lunch times to give them time to socialise, because they've been in isolation effectively for 5 months. So it's making sure children, even at secondary school, have enough time to socialise with their friends whilst being safe. So the school has been divided into 5 sections where one year group does not mix with the other, to ensure that there are no crossovers and no breach of bubbles, as we call them. So there are no cases. But in addition to that, it's ensuring we provide a broad and balanced curriculum so students access all their lessons. Students receive support. And the first thing, and I have to say it may be a bit boring for students, is we've had to test to find what those gaps are. You know, at the end of the day, this is what they were expected to learn. Have they learned it? What are the gaps, and how can we support them? And again, a lot has been put in place to support students' emotional and mental well-being, checking what are their anxieties. So, and looking for the positives. Yes, we were locked down for 5 months, but what did we gain from it? What did you learn about yourself? What did you find difficult? And how did you get through it?
That's it. And I think that's 100% there. I think 100%. You know, to speak again, going back to me being a parent, I think we use this lockdown to kind of show our children that, do you know what, this is something that you're never gonna experience again. You know, 5-6 months with your parents. All right, there are some days, there are up days and down days, but the whole point is that I don't remember ever having that long period of time with my parents as a youngster. So being able to, you know, for example, myself, we kind of brought a bit more of our culture into it, to be able to show our kids, you know, we taught them Turkish, did things that could help bring that culture back in. So it's a positive experience that we kind of instilled into them to make sure we're going back into school that it wasn't a negative thing. Like you say, it's ensuring making that mental awareness that it's a positive. So I 100% agree with you there.
And showing that actually you have shown resilience.
Exactly.
You did not give up. You carried on, and being adaptable as well. You know, nobody knew we were going to be locked down for 5 months. And it's actually being able to say, it's being able to adapt to it, make the most of it, and now going back to the new normal and adapting to that as well.
100%. Now, I know everyone's kind of talking about it. What, you know, is it going to happen? Is there going to be a second lockdown? You know, is it going to spike again? You know, there's a lot of kind of worry around that. Do you think if it does happen again, God forbid, do you think that the schools state schools will be asked to adopt online teaching as a mandatory measures, or what's your thoughts on that?
Schools have to offer. So in my role as a curriculum, I've been speaking to all my heads of faculty, all heads of subject, as to what are their changes to their examinations as a result of this lockdown, because there are loads of changes, but also asking for what is your contingency for should we lock down? Where does that fit in? So that should be there, and every school should now have a remote learning policy. What will happen in case we do go into lockdown, to ensure that education continues? Because speaking from a secondary perspective, I can't imagine them not having examinations this year. So there will this year, students will need to sit GCSEs and A-levels, and how do we ensure that they get prepared for them? So I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when it happens. But I'm not sure whether it will be a blanket. I think it could be a case of local lockdowns, local bubbles. And when it does happen, parents need to pick that up. So if a school closes, my students know that if school closes on Wednesday, on Thursday, there will be online lessons following their normal timetable. So schools are now conducting audits of whether students can access laptops and desktops, and whether they've got access to internet, to then be prepared for this to happen. And yes, ideally would like to give a laptop to every student, but that isn't possible. So it's making the most of what we have.
100%. Nuriye, your insight has been really valuable, and I think a lot of people watching will be making a lot of notes. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be asking more questions. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Voice of Diaspora with the Ctca. I'm Eray, and I'm still joined with Nuriye. Nuriye, how are you? You all right?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you so much for sticking with us. I wanted to get into the second. I'll talk more about the Turkish schools. I think there's such a big area there, and I think there's so much we need to tell the kind of our community about. Just to kind of kick things off, how did you get involved with our Turkish schools, and how are you involved with our Turkish schools?
I became involved in Turkish schools as a student. So being able to speak my mother tongue was very important to my mother. She wanted to ensure that we were fluent in Turkish. And so she insisted on every Sunday taking us to a Turkish school. So I became a student there and moved up and did my GCSEs and A-levels, and then started teaching at Turkish schools on a voluntary basis to give something back. Because I think they're so important in keeping the community together. Sometimes it's so difficult to find someone from your own community who's going through the same issues as you, actually. So, for example, I would say, well, I want to go out. And my mother would say, no, you can't go. And I would say, but my friends are. And my mother would say, well, what about your friends from Turkish school? And I would say, So it's just brought home that actually I also had to continue with my Turkish heritage. So that's how I became involved in Turkish schools. And then when I became a parent myself, I took my children to Turkish school, knowing that the moment I walked through the door, I would get involved in the running of Turkish schools as well. And that's what happened. So I became involved in trying to bring them up to a certain standard, to maintain quality of education there, and to bridge the gap between the British education system and the Turkish school system, because they are run by volunteers. The people who open Turkish schools are not in it to make money. They are not in it to get personal glory for themselves. They really are there to try and keep the community together, usually giving up their own time and also cutting back from their own work. So some of them are restaurant owners and they won't open their shop on that day, or they'll employ someone so they can come to Turkish school. And I felt it was important to support them in the running and ensure that as more and more requirements are on Turkish school, so for example, for policies, making the use of my skills in the education system and bringing them over to the Turkish school system. So that's how I got involved. And then from then, so being involved with 1 or 2 Turkish schools, I then moved over to working with the consortium, and got elected as the chairperson, which meant all of a sudden from 2 Turkish schools, there were now 36 of them to try and support. And that's what it is. So my involvement in there is one, ensuring, like I said, they adhere to all the rules. So before Turkish schools opened, we provided free training for all the teachers on child protection and safeguarding. What are the rules? What are the regulations that they need to adhere to? The prevent agenda is very big, and rightly so. It should be, to prevent the teaching of extremism. There are groups of people who assume that Turkish schools teach extremism, and that really is not the case, because they have to adhere to the prevent agenda. So training on that as well. So ensuring things are age appropriate, that there isn't any form of racism involved. So we're working on that. One of our projects that we're working on is part of Black History Month and celebrating Black Turkish community members actually, and celebrating their successes. So the first pilot that flew in a war in combat was a Black pilot of Turkish origin. So it's bringing that into light, so our students, our community, can relate and improve interracial relations. So that's what we do. And then obviously when we went into lockdown, it's ensuring that we can continue with Turkish schools. The biggest problem for Turkish schools at the moment is they're losing numbers. People are not bringing their children to Turkish schools, which is making it very difficult. The rents we have to pay for the buildings we use are between £400 and £800 a month, a week. And Turkish schools charge between £150 and £200 a year. So it's ensuring that there is fundraising streams there for people, because there isn't grants. There aren't any grants out there to get. So it's supporting them with getting students, keeping Turkish schools high profile, and during lockdown, finding a way of ensuring education continues. So the Turkish schools in the UK, after the Easter holiday, were able to provide face-to-face online education, interactive online education, through a platform that was organised via the consortium. We approached a Turkish company, a company from Turkey, and thankfully they gave us access to their platform, which was far safer than Zoom, and it still continues to be safer than Zoom, because we couldn't access Microsoft Teams or Google Meets because of the cost implications. So we trained all the teachers on that, and up to 1,000 students a week were receiving Turkish lessons online all the way till the end of July.
Wow, it's amazing. It's great to hear that. That's amazing stuff. And taking it back just a step for a moment, just kind of talking about the Turkish schools. How were they? Can you tell us how they were set up? And I guess another part to that question is, what kind of support do you get from kind of the TRNC in Turkey to help the Turkish schools?
The biggest support we get from them are the teachers, and they are vital. When we get the teachers from them, you do not have to pay for your own. Because, like I said, with all these financial constraints, you can't afford it. Yes, we do have UK teachers who are equally wonderful. Some of them were teachers in Cyprus and Turkey, and they've moved over here. Others have worked in schools, and some of them just want to be involved in the community. So you've got them. But it's the biggest supporter of Turkish schools are the teachers that come from Turkey and Cyprus. So that's the support we get from them, really. And the consortium works with both the TRNC and the Turkish Education Ministry to ensure that we work in collaboration. So if there is training, every person is trained. If a problem is faced at one Turkish school, we solve it together. So they're not in competition. They used to be years ago when they were in competition with one another. who had most schools or who had the best folk dancing group, and now ensuring that we're all working together and supporting each other and demonstrating everything. So unfortunately this year we could not have the Yin Muchnis on the 23rd of April celebration because of COVID, but the year before we had a packed hall, Conway Hall in central London, where we had students from different Turkish schools come and showcase things in their mother tongue, which was fantastic.
Amazing. I mean, I just side note, completely irrelevant, but the Mutually Son events are always a big part of me, because that's where I met some of my closest friends that I have today from being in Turkish school and going. And it's a great chance to kind of meet other Turkish schools, other people from other Turkish schools, and people that are just like you. And it's a great kind of bring that community together. So, you know, it's a shame that this year these events couldn't take place, but hopefully next year.
We managed to put them online, which was great. So
there you go.
Watch the videos of
I will get nostalgic.
Online. So
I never got into that. I need to get into that.
And teachers put them all together.
That's amazing.
We managed to celebrate it. So it's ensuring that it's there, it's high profile. And yes, we can't be together face to face, but at least online we can be together.
100%. And I mean, you kind of mentioned before what the kind of Turkish schools did when we kind of went into lockdown. I know we mentioned it earlier about the chances of it happening again. And obviously schools are closing down, you know, because of cases. I mean, is there a plan in place to continue that online learning should the Turkish schools shut down?
Well, most Turkish schools are starting online anyway. One of the things that they have to do, if a Turkish school, because they are providing education for over 5 students, they have to comply with all the guidance that you would need to for a mainstream school. So last weekend just gone, we had a training on Saturday and Sunday when we took both the teachers and the organisers of Turkish schools through their responsibility. So yes, we all want to come back to face-to-face education. But one, how are you going to maintain? How are you going to adhere to all schools? And we took them through what a risk assessment that they would need to go through. And all this education obviously needs to happen in dual language. So we went through it in Turkish and in English to ensure that everyone understood. And we also looked at the individual teacher risk assessments that they would need to be completed. So both staff and students are safe, because ideally safety comes above anything else. And so many schools have started opening online, again using web.tv, which is our online platform. So the first school opened this evening. So Southgate Atatürk Okulu opened this evening. Ali Rıza, I believe, starts tomorrow. Ali Rıza Demircioğlu Okulu. Wimbledon Türk Okulu opens tomorrow. Nottingham opens next week. Hornsey Atatürk Okulu opens on Sunday. All online. So it's ensuring that we trained the teachers to deliver online, because it was all very alien. Yes, I've been teaching for 20 years, but I've been teaching standing in front of the class. Exactly. All of a sudden, having to do it online, it's an entirely different skill set. So we trained the teachers, and I have to say the teachers have become so good at it. Majority of them are now far better than I am on web.tv. they run away with it. So if there's ever an issue, I call them rather than the other way around. So yes, Turkish schools have started online. And I guess anyone listening, please do join, especially making the most. We spoke about what you can get out of COVID, a positive. And the positive maybe you couldn't fit a Turkish school into your busy schedule. Then, you know, give up your Saturday, your Sunday, or your Friday night. But you're giving up to 2 hours on a weekend or on a Friday night. Go to these, join these online classes, see how you go. They are taught by trained teachers. They are fully aware of the British education system and the fact that it's no longer just lecturing, and they are engaging. So Turkish schools have come along a long way in terms of the quality of education they provide. Yeah, there's still a hell of a lot to do, but we need young blood into Turkish schools, because all those people who set it up are now ready to leave. They're ready to retire, and we need young blood to come in to keep them alive, because otherwise we're going to lose them. So, for example, Waltham Forest Turkish school is crying out that it's a beautifully organised Turkish school, but they need new people to help support run the school, because, like I said, it's done by volunteers. Yeah. So come and join and help. And if you don't like what you see, help us shape it together.
100%. So, I mean, you know, hopefully people are watching this feeling inspired to either bring their kids to Turkish school or even volunteer and help out themselves. So if they're looking to do that, either of them, you know, they're looking to the chance or help volunteer, what should they do? Where should they go? What was their plan of action?
Well, I think they should go onto the website and look at all our member schools, because there they will find the contact details of all the member schools there and suit the hours that suit you. So pick a school. So some, like I said, are on Friday, some are on Saturday, some are on Sunday, something that fits into your routine. Find it, get in touch with the people there and go and have a look. Then, you know, sometimes I think it's the cheapest form of childcare. 32 weeks of education for £180 at some schools, when you think actually we pay a lot more for that, you know, than that for far less. So it's, no one's in it to make money. Everyone's here for the for the benefit of the community. Let's keep our young together and in education.
Perfect. Amazing. 100%. 100%. Nuriye, when talking about our community and our culture, one important part of our culture that sticks out for me is folklore dancing. I mean, it's something that's kind of embedded into our culture, and it's something that really resonates for our people. If someone has a child and they want them to learn that, or the child wants to learn that, what are their options? What should they look to do?
Go to a Turkish school. So that's where they go. And actually, folk is such a big part, like you said, of our culture. But it's also really important in keeping children engaged at Turkish school. Especially if they get to a stage where they're competing internationally. That is fantastic, the buzz they get from doing that. So it's going to a Turkish school. And actually, one of the questions we had is even online learning. We're looking at ways of putting folk dancing into there, because even when things go back to normal, some people are going to want online education rather than going into schools. Online education gives you the language. The Turkish schools is what keep the culture alive. So we can do it for a short while with online folk lessons, and even I will join. Let's see how that works out. So join a Turkish school, ask about their folk group, watch a few videos of their last shows and exhibitions and go accordingly. But it is so important for our culture, and the pride on the children's face when they are on stage, when they could be really shy, you put on a folk costume and out they are dancing in front of 4,000 people. That is an experience money can't buy. So Turkish schools.
There we go. Now, I mean, just thinking a bit more broadly now, you know, we have a lot of children going off to university, you know, in the next week or so. It's you know, that's which is a whole new life stage for those people in this kind of current climate. Have you got any advice for those on those people, and, you know, and how to prepare for it, or a list of essentials, whether it's managing how to cook for themselves? Hopefully they're not going to be making mola here by themselves, but how they can kind of cook for themselves, or how they can manage their money?
I think first thing they have to go with is confidence. Unfortunately, the students starting university this year and those who are starting college, there seems to be this feeling out there that they were given those grades they didn't deserve. And I want to, as a teacher, say, actually, that is not the case at all. Teachers awarded grades that students worked towards. So up until March, students had worked really hard and prepared for exams. So teachers gave them grades. They didn't gift them grades. They gave them the grades that they deserved. So they should go to university with their head up high. They're there because 100%. Those are the grades they deserve, because forever they will be tainted as the year group that were gifted their grades. So go there with the confidence you're there because you deserve to be. And I think start as you mean to go on. Yes, it is a life-changing experience. Make the most of it. Come out with a good degree classification, but also make the most of all the different cultures you meet there. Go and join the clubs. I'm not sure how they're going to cope with Freshers Week.
Be a very different Freshers Week.
From what I could remember of Freshers Week. Be safe. Be confident and make the most of it. There are so many opportunities there, not just on the academic side, but the social side as well. You do make friends for life there, and be independent. It will be a wake-up call to some of our young people, actually, who've had a magic cupboard in their bedroom where they chuck the dirty laundry, and a few days later it appears all folded and nicely clean for them. They will realize that those cupboards don't exist everywhere, and they will need to, but budgeting, that's the biggest thing, the challenge they will come to, because it's difficult to budget when you're 18. And so it's making the most of that and learning the skills, really.
100%.
That's
and be sensible.
Be sensible. Don't overshop. Yes, and don't overshop. Don't overshop. And that goes to parents as well. Don't buy them too many things. Let them pick their own. And I had a friend who sent her daughter to Cambridge, and they prepared everything. They bought everything. She turned up at Halls, and I think a week or so later, she brought it all back. And she said to her, "Mum, everything is old there. I looked posh compared to everyone else because I had new things. So give me the old kettle, give me the old toaster." So don't overbuy.
Yeah, I can imagine our community and food shopping it goes hand in hand. So I can imagine a lot of kids going with lots of bags of TFC bags.
Oh yeah, of course. And they should learn to cook more in here. I would like to see how that goes down in a communal.
Definitely. That could be something for the future, maybe, teaching how to cook. There you go.
Online cooking lessons.
Online cooking lessons, indeed. What are the ambitions for the organisation, for the community for the next 2 to 5 years?
Keeping the Turkish schools alive. It's the ambition is we have to keep the Turkish schools alive, because unfortunately, unless we get the numbers up, we're going to lose so many in the next 2 to 3 years. So we've got to keep Turkish schools alive, and we've got to keep Turkish GCSE and A-level alive. We came very close to losing them during the GCSE examination reforms, and we worked hard to keep them. And they've gone from OCR to Pearson EdXL as an examination board. And unless they make profit for the examination board, they don't care. So we've got to increase the number of students taking them. But also, I feel so strongly about these qualifications. So many parents don't value it. Oh, what are they going to do with Turkish GCSE? What are they going to do with Turkish A-level? You do use them for getting into university. We've had students, because of all this hoo-ha that went on with A-levels this year, one girl got into City University to study law due to her Turkish A-levels. She just happened to have done it the year before, and she used it. So it's, if we don't value our own language and heritage, others will not value it for us. 100%. So it's ensuring it's there. It's ensuring that our young people do the examinations. And gone are the days that if you can speak Turkish, you can do Turkish GCSE. You do need to attend school. You do need to have the lessons. And for the A-levels, even more so. It's a proper subject now where you are expected to read text, literary text. So you've got Veda by Ayşe Kulin. They need to read and be able to analyze the text, and also films and really understand the culture. So you can no longer say, well, I speak Turkish, so I should be able to breeze through Turkish GCSE and A-level. That's our hope, keeping those two alive. If we've done that, great. If we can get more students into prestigious universities and support them with that, fantastic.
Amazing, amazing. And how can CONSE help support the consortium moving forward?
Doing an audit, conducting an audit. How many CONSE members actually send their children to Turkish schools? That would be quite interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Do they all send them there? And if they don't, why not? Actually saying to people, you're a member of this community, you're in the CONSE, its whole point is there to lobby for us, to make our voices heard. How are you making your voice heard over here? How are you introducing your child to this community? And actually having those difficult conversations with those members that aren't sending their children there. Because we have a lot of young people coming through now who don't speak a word of Turkish.
Yeah.
Yet they want to be a part of the culture, which is great.
Yeah.
But culture and language are so intertwined. I think it's so important to be able to communicate in your language. That's when you become a real member of a community. And not be embarrassed. We all speak with different accents. Why is it not embarrassing when we speak with different English accents, but all of a sudden we become shy because of our Cypriot accent? That is our accent. That is how we speak. And be proud of it. And making errors, well, yeah, that's the way you do it.
Yeah,
really. So
100%.
CONSE needs to ensure that more children attend Turkish schools.
So it's targeting the youngsters.
Financially would be great. So, for example, Turkish schools are really struggling now. Many of them would not have been able to pay their rents. How are they? 6 schools, 6 of my members are also CONSE members. How is the CONSE helping them? Are they helping them financially? And that's what they need to do, support their members so they can provide a level of service. And we're there to support as well. But we're entirely voluntary and have no funding streams, unfortunately.
Oh, well, best of luck with
Thank
everything.
You.
Yeah. We'll get there, definitely. And I think it's to inspire them. We need to get the younger generation and bring them in. And that's, like you say, it's very important for the future of our community and our culture. Just kind of bringing it kind of to a close. Is there anything you want to add? Anything our community should be aware of, or what to expect at all?
In terms of in education, I think there are a lot of changes coming through, and it's being informed and making those decisions, making informed choices. So, for example, if you have a child in year 11, attending all the meetings and finding out what has changed. And please don't revert to private tuition. That is not the answer to everything. A lot of parents are really straining themselves to pay for private tuition to ensure their children do well. We all want our children to do well, but we can't necessarily pay for it. So it's ensuring that you broaden their horizons, you watch the news together with your children, you discuss the political scene with them. It's going into asking your child is, so I hear there are changes to design and technology GCSE. Tell me what they are. What does it mean for you? What are you going to do differently? Having those conversations, and these conversations don't need to be in English, they can be in Turkish too. And saying, what do you want to do next? Where do you want to go to? What career aspirations do you have? And how are you going to get there? You can start that from very early on and help your child plan. Don't make the decisions for them. Please don't. Support them in making their own choices by holding them to account, really.
Help them find their path, essentially.
Help them, support them find their path.
Support them.
Please let them study subjects they want to. The number of times I've had the conversation with a parent, well, you know, I don't want my child to do GCSE drama because they're not going to become an actress. And it's actually saying, actually, GCSE drama is so important in terms of communication and confidence and being able to put yourself forward. Why shouldn't they do it? We can't all be doctors, lawyers, and if that fails, teachers, which is what the community seems to think. Think of all the different careers out there. And support your children getting there, get them to find out. And for those people who are in careers in our community, come and be a role model. Speak about, you know, this is how I got here. These were my issues. This is what I struggled with. Come and do that.
Well, Nuriye, I just want to say thank you for your advice information. I know that there is some very valuable information there for parents and for kids as well. In this unprecedented times, there's a lot of information that they could be taking and hopefully digesting and taking action from. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all the success for the academic year ahead. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you again on our next program. Thank you and goodbye.